Hi, everyone. I want to start by introducing Carla Pincombe. In 2013, Carla underwent her first cycle of egg donation. Since then, she's now donated 8 times. And I think that what we were discussing earlier is that she's created such happiness in so many people's lives. And I think she truly embodies the altruistic spirit that should be at the core of egg donation and surrogacy. So Carla will talk about her motivation, her path, and the ways to navigate the forums that are out there. So let's everyone please welcome Carla.
Hello. As you just heard, I started donating in 2013. I wanted to become a donor because I was blessed to have 3 children. I was able to become pregnant very easily, and I really enjoyed motherhood. It was what I always wanted to do, and it would have been absolutely heartbreaking for me if I had gotten to that point in my life where I was ready to have kids and then found that I couldn't do it. So once I'd finished having my family and I'd finished breastfeeding, I signed up to Egg Donation Australia. Within a week of signing up, I clicked with somebody, we met up, I went through the process with the clinic, and I did my first donation. I think a couple of the reasons that I really wanted to donate were to help bring that joy to somebody else. And also I felt that because I had finished my family, that from then on my eggs were just going to waste. I wasn't going to be making use of them. And I felt like doing something that was relatively easy for me, with something that I wasn't using anymore, could make a huge difference for somebody else who wanted to have a family. I was very naive about egg donation when I started. I didn't know anything about IVF. I'd never been involved with the IVF process, and I didn't know anybody who had. I just assumed going into it that I had eggs that worked, so I would give them to somebody and they would have a baby and it would all work beautifully. I didn't realise the statistics of IVF, and I didn't realise how many other issues people could have with their bodies, with carrying babies. I thought that I would donate to people similar to myself, probably youngish couples who hadn't been able to have kids themselves. As it turns out, I have donated to older couples, people that already have children, some that don't, gay couples who are using surrogates. So once I started, the people that I thought that I would connect with weren't necessarily the people I ended up connecting with. Once I'd done my first cycle and my recipient became pregnant, I found the sense of joy and the happiness that I could see in my recipients rather addictive. So I went on again. I met another beautiful couple who Clinton's here today with his surrogate, and we hit it off straight away, and it was a beautiful relationship, and they now have a beautiful little girl born from their surrogate at the end of last year. I think I agree with something that a speaker said yesterday regarding surrogates, that there is a healthy mix of altruism and narcissism, and I think the same applies to egg donation, that not everybody can do it, not everybody wants to do it, not everybody has the genetics or the medical background that would allow them to do it, but being that I knew that I was in a situation where I could do that, I felt like it was something that I should do. I went into it thinking that I would help 1 or 2 people, and that would be great because they would have a family that they wanted. As it turns out, once I got started, the joy and the happiness that I saw these families have, it was addictive, and I wanted to keep doing it and help as many people as I could. And then I got to the point where I thought, I've got a limit of 10 families that I can make. It would be such a waste for me not to use these spaces. If I can help create more families, then I felt like that was something that I should do. So after donating to Clinton and Callum, I then gone on to donate again to 6 more families. So we now have 4 babies who have already been born, 3 more who are pregnant, and 1 who's awaiting a transfer into their surrogate now. I I expected to go into it just with helping one or two families and then leaving them to it, but as it's turned out, with the way that I have donated to several people and the way they are, their personalities, they've all decided to create an extended family amongst themselves. So many of my recipients have met each other now. They all talk about their babies as being like cousins. So we've created a whole nother extended family of kids who are going to grow up knowing these cousins, these genetic relatives, and also having a sense of family and a sense of knowing other people who are in the same situation as them, who have been brought into the world through donation. And I really hope that that helps normalise their situation and their lives for themselves. If you find that you need a donor or you would like to become a donor yourself, there are lots of ways you can go about it. And I think one of the first decisions that you need to make is whether you are wanting a known donor, somebody that you know and that you meet, or whether you want an anonymous donor. There are different situations, different scenarios in each country. You can do both in Australia as well. If you want to have an anonymous donor, you can go to a clinic and they will just pair you up with somebody on their list, and you do the cycle without ever meeting them. Obviously in Australia, true anonymous donation doesn't exist, so by the time the child is 18, they can access all of your information and contact, or all the donors' information, and contact them from there. For me, it was very important that the children knew who I was, that they had access to me throughout their childhood, and whenever any questions came up about something they were good at or something they weren't good at, or a way they looked or a mannerism that they had, if there was something they could see in themselves that they couldn't see in their parents, I wanted them to be able to come to me and ask. And maybe I can just say, no, that's not me, that's from me, I don't know where that came from. But it's not something that would grow in their mind or that they would think about and worry about. And I didn't want them to be creating a mythical person in their mind, this magical princess lady who could, give me such a better life, and like a lot of adopted people think about. I just wanted to be a real person that they know that they can ask questions of. It was also important for me, for my children to know, these donor children are all genetically half siblings, and I really wanted my children to have the opportunity to meet these kids as well, and also for them to understand how important it is for you to help somebody if you can. So I wanted to do a known donation. I found Egg Donation Australia, which is one of the forums. So there are a few different ways that you can find a donor, and there are a lot of different ways that donors can be found. Some people do advertisements in magazines like Sydney's Child, Melbourne Child, those sorts of things. There are a lot of different forums, some where donors put up ads or recipients put up ads and you find each other. I'll talk specifically about Egg Donation Australia because that's where my experience is. Egg Donation Australia, or EDA, is much more of a community sort of forum rather than it being an ad that you read and respond to. The people that join EDA create their thread with essentially what's their ad or their story at the start, and then it becomes an ongoing record of their journey. You read an ad that you like or that clicks with you, and you write comments to them and they write comments on your thread, and you get to know each other. People write about their ups and downs. Some people join EDA before they even know that they need a donor, just because they want to find out information about it. And you get to know people rather than just reading an ad or a sad story. You really get a feel for what people are like, and the recipients really get to know what their donors are like. You can see them supporting other people. You can see people sharing their joys and their heartache, and it's a really great environment for people to get support. On EDA, there are three main aims. One is to offer support, which you get from other recipients, from other donors, all from each other. Some people create quite close friendships. Other people just comment every now and then. We also provide a lot of information. So there is research, information from clinics, information about the IVF process, information about side effects from the drugs, about how to develop relationships, how to keep relationships, what to do when things go wrong. And it's also an opportunity for donors and recipients to meet each other, for you to find like-minded people, sometimes just for friendship or sometimes to actually go ahead and try to make a family. I think it's very different than when you're looking for a sperm donor. It's very different from when you're going overseas and paying for eggs. In Australia, it's all altruistic, so egg donors don't get paid for doing it. You get your costs reimbursed, all your medical expenses are paid for, but you don't get paid to do it. So we have the situation where instead of recipients looking through folders to pick a donor that they would like, the same you do with sperm, it's the other way around. So egg donors find a recipient that they would like to help, and they offer their eggs to that person, and then you go from there. So it's a little bit different that way. Some recipients are really good at building relationships and put in a lot of effort and really find a lot of comfort in that sort of situation. Some recipients really want a particular genetic look or whatever, and they're the people that would need to go overseas and pay for that privilege of choosing those sorts of genetics. So with the donors that are on EDA, everybody there is well informed. Everybody there would like to be a donor. They understand the IVF process. They understand the risks involved. So once people make matches, they're far less likely to have people pull out on them because the donors are going into it already well informed. In a lot of ads, when people think, I could be a donor, this person sounds great, and they'll call them and contact them, and then they find out what it entails, and they find out about all the injections you have to take and the side effects that might come from it, and suddenly they, I don't know if I can actually go through with it. I've had one of my recipients who had a friend offer to be their donor, and they got halfway through the process before the friend said, you know what, I really want to see you have a family, but I actually can't do this for you. And that can be heartbreaking for people. So I think by coming to a forum where you've got donors who are already well informed, it means that they're going into it knowing what they're going into, and they're far less likely to be surprised by anything along the way, and they're more likely to actually go ahead. We also have a lot of meetups through EDA, so that we've got members from all over the country, and every state runs regular meetups where people can get together, you can chat face to face with other recipients, you can meet donors, you can ask questions, and I think for a lot of people, although the online community is fantastic, it's really nice to just be able to sit and chat with someone, and you can ask a question, and when they answer, sometimes that brings up more questions, and you can answer those, get those answered straight away, rather than having to type your question out and then wait for somebody to see it and answer, and then that brings up more questions and you have to type again and wait. So the meetups are fantastic. We have those every month or so. It's a really good way for people to get together, share stories with recipients who are going through the same thing, and for a lot of recipients, they don't know anybody else in their family or friends who are going through similar, or that have told them about it. You know, for a lot of people, even doing IVF is something they keep quiet until they have success. Other people are very vocal about it, and they have lots of friends and family who know. But for those, particularly those who don't, having a community of people who know what you're going through and understand the sadness and the desperation is really very helpful. So the meetups are a great way for people to meet and put faces to the names. And also, sometimes people's online personas aren't a great reflection of who they are, and you'll read people's stories and it doesn't necessarily give you a good insight to who they are, but when you meet them face to face and you click and there's something about them that you can't quite put your finger on, but you really feel a connection with that person, and they're things that can only happen face to face, which is why we find the meetup so important. We liken it a bit to, when you go to a party and you sort of don't know anyone, you get introduced to a group of people and everyone seems equally nice, but over the course of the night, there's someone that you click with. There's someone, for some reason, you start having banter, you have a laugh, you really get along with that particular person. And that's what we hope to do in EDA. It's not just about reading one ad and replying to it and then you just go from there. This is about people getting to know each other, getting to feel comfortable with each other, and that's what I've found with all of my recipients. There were people who I really clicked with, people who I could imagine being part of my friendship circle aside from the egg donation, and people that I wanted to have an ongoing relationship with, because if they have children, if they have success, then those children are forever related genetically to me and my own children. And so I didn't want to be donating to people just because they had a sad story if I didn't want them to be part of my life
Carla, 5
going
minutes.
forward.
5 minutes.
Thank you. I think the main thing with any time you're trying to look for a donor in whatever form it is or whatever type of scenario, the most important thing is really just to be honest about who you are, what you're looking for, whether you want a lot of ongoing contact, whether you just want to have their number so that you can call them if you need to, because there's a donor for everybody. Everyone will have someone that's going to want the same expectations, and if you go into it putting on a face of what you think people want to see, people are going to end up getting disappointed when you can't come through with all the things that you've promised. But if you go into it honestly, and the donors are honest about what they're looking for as well, everyone will eventually find someone that can match what it is that they're looking for.
Let's open it up
Everybody,
to, I'm sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
go.
Do we want to open it up to questions, perhaps?
Yeah.
First of all, you're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I just wondered, when did you first think about donating eggs? Was it before you had your kids or afterwards?
It was while I was pregnant with my third. So I've got 3 girls myself, and it was at that time when we knew that the third child was going to be our last. And I really loved being pregnant. I really loved having children, and I just thought, once I'm finished, what a waste that is after that. A lot of donors go into it because they have family members who have done IVF themselves and they understand the struggle. They've seen their sister struggle or a cousin, and they really wanted to stop someone else going through the same thing. Other donors have had to use IVF themselves. So there are a lot of people who have polycystic ovaries or other health issues that makes it difficult for them to conceive naturally, even though their eggs are good quality anyway. And so if they've had to do IVF themselves and perhaps been scared that they weren't going to be able to have children, once they've got their children themselves, they're like, well, that would have been heartbreaking for me. I want to help somebody else. And because of the IVF process that's involved, the health issues they'd encountered themselves don't affect their donations.
Success rates are related primarily to the age of the person supplying the egg.
Yeah.
How old are your donors?
There's a big mix. So we have people who show interest sometimes from 21. Some clinics say that the donors have to be over 25. Some prefer that you've finished your family. But we've got a mix. We've got donors from 21 up to about 38. And the 38-year-old has had success only a few months ago. But I think it's like anything. Obviously, there's a window, and technically, the younger you would be, perhaps the more success you would have. But then we also have a lot of people, recipients on EDA, who have premature ovarian failure at 26, who you would think are in the ideal category to be donors themselves, but who find they can't. I was 33 when I started, and I'm 35 now, and my most recent recipient just became pregnant in February at 35. So I think it's one of those things, you wouldn't want to leave it too late, and I don't think, if you've got a friend or someone who's offering to be a donor in their late 30s, I think you'd really want to be getting them checked out, get medical checks and things done before you pin your hopes on it. But there's always grey areas at either end of the scale.
When you first started this process, did you have a strong opinion about whether you wanted to meet the couple, or were you okay being anonymous? And has that opinion changed over the course of your donations?
I never wanted to do anonymous. For me, for 2 reasons. Partly, I'm too curious. There's no way that I could possibly donate eggs to someone I didn't know and then not know the outcomes of that. I want to know how many follicles I've got, how big they are, how many eggs they get, how many fertilise, the transfers, and luckily all the recipients I've had have all been very happy to share the information, because once the eggs are taken from me, I don't get anything from the clinic, so then I have to rely on my recipients. But I have had teary phone calls with positive pregnancy tests. I've had calls from hospitals after babies were born, and that's the payment that I get for doing it. The joy that I hear in the voices, or that I see on their faces when they get their positive pregnancy test for the first time in their life, or when they're holding their baby that they never thought they would have. For me, being known was very important because I didn't want the kids to ever grow up wondering who I was or having questions about who I was. I was very aware that I needed to be available to them if anything ever came up. And I didn't go into it expecting to have very close friendships with my recipients. I sort of thought, oh, well, I can donate and then they can contact me if they want to. But a pleasant side benefit has been, as it's turned out, that a lot of us have become very good friends, which is lovely. But that's not what I expected. But yes, being a known donor is always what I wanted, and now, having been through the process, it absolutely solidified that I made the right decision for myself.
Great, thank you. I think we should move on to the next speaker. I'm so sorry.
Just one housekeeping issue before Ashton comes back. Videoing. We're not allowing videoing with your phones in the rooms during the sessions this weekend because every speaker and panellist has had to sign a video consent form. Some of them do not want to be videoed. And so we're videoing all the sessions where we allow those to be done. They'll be on the website in a few weeks. But please, no videoing with your phones because the sensitive issues are being discussed by some panellists during the weekend.